Welcome to Decide to Succeed. I'm really excited for today's guest because she actually introduced me to Science of Mind, which is New Thought, which is what we are going to be talking about today. So I'm really excited to share with you my friend, Genevieve Joy.
Hi.
Welcome.
I didn't really realize that I introduced you to...
You did.
I remember that conversation.
Yeah.
So that was your first
that's when
time you even went
First time I heard of it.
Wow.
First time that I eventually looked up a church that was in my area, and then I started going.
Well,
and
look at that.
A whole new world, because before I had been doing self-development, but I felt like it was an external self-development. When I learned of Science of Mind, it was more of an internal self-development, if that makes sense.
That's the idea.
Break it down.
Yeah, it starts in, and then the rest is,
Awesome.
So
tell us about you, Genevieve. You, I know you grew up with the teaching of Science of Mind.
I did. That's how my parents met.
Okay.
Actually.
Awesome.
So my father grew up in it. He's from New York. His father was an actor. And they were in the church from the time my dad was a kid. So he doesn't really know anything different. I mean, they were, Lutheran background. My grandfather was. But my grandfather discovered this. He was a more modern kind of guy. He was an artist.
Yeah.
And a lot of actors and artists were in the teaching. So that's how my father grew up.
Awesome.
He was from Long Island, and they used to go into the city to go to the services.
Right.
It wasn't everywhere back then.
Right.
It was smaller.
Yeah.
And my mom learned about it through her first agent. She was an actress, and she had come from LA to New York, and she was working with Cunningham, and he was into Science of Mind, and he invited her to church, and she was like, because she had grown up where church sucked. Really, so she wasn't really into it, but he said, I think you'll like it, so she went. And then one Christmas season, they were having a prosperity seminar, and it was like the first 3 weeks leading up to Christmas. And my father, he tells the story, I was in particular need of prosperity. He was in a kind of a depression because he had just gotten divorced because his wife told him she didn't want children, and he really wanted children.
Right.
So he's like pushing 40, and he's like, am I ever going to have a family? And he sits down in the only free seat, so I guess a lot of people were yearning for prosperity in that moment. It was packed. And he sits down next to my mother. And according to her, he sat down next to her, and his pickup line was, wow, you're the first person I've ever met with eyes that are even nicer than mine. Yeah, and then she married him, so, I guess it worked. But she had 3 small kids. She had just gotten divorced, and she had 3 little kids. And she was like, did I make a mistake? Am I going to meet somebody who's going to be good for them? And so he's like, you want to go out with me tomorrow? And she's like, I can't. I've got this event at my son's school. And then he hears, you have a son? And then she's like, I have 3. And he's like, it's a Christmas miracle! And they were like moved in by New Year's, and and then there was me.
So what do you think drove that, them meeting, them both thinking what they wanted, and then...
Well, they both had very clear ideas of what that's part of Science of Mind, right? Is that you know what you want, and you bring yourself to a level where you're equal to it. You have to see yourself as equal to that, because there's a lot of... one of the reasons why people get very confused by New Thought is that it says you're getting what you want. Right? You go, well, you got something, well, you wanted it.
Well,
and it's not necessarily that you wanted it.
Right.
But when they say, like, water seeks its own level, if you're attracting a certain experience, it doesn't mean that that's what you want. But it means that something in you believes that you're equal to that.
Yeah.
So...
that's a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people.
Is.
For me, going back, when I was in the position where I was like, what is life right now? Like, what's happening? And that was a hard pill to swallow once I learned that, my thoughts, my vibration, it's equaling to how I'm seeing or what I believe, even if it's like a limited belief or whatever it is.
Everything you do, everything you don't do is based on something you believe.
Exactly.
So whether you take the risk, whether you don't bother, whether you do the work, whether you skip it, is based on something that you believe. Right. People don't want to exercise And then they just go, oh, I'm lazy. They're not lazy. They have something around. They don't think it'll work for them because they tried it once before, you know, or they started and they went to the gym and they were embarrassed because they felt fat. Or, you know, whatever the reason why they just don't, there's something that is causing you to not make that decision or to make that decision.
Right.
There's a belief behind it.
Yeah.
And so my mom was working with a practitioner, which is what I'm on the road to.
Exactly.
I just started
We'll definitely
year 2.
talk about that. That's on the list.
So I just started year 2 of practitioner training, and they're not ministers, they're like a notch under, but you can actually work with people one-on-one and know the truth with people, right? And sit
and
with
get
someone.
them to see the truth.
Exactly.
About
so
how their life is shaping because of what
so
begins
if you
in
come
their thoughts
to me and you're like, I don't have any money and I need to work on money, you know, then I can sit with you and go, okay, well, that may be a fact of your circumstance right now, but the truth is that abundance is everywhere. Money is everywhere.
Exactly.
And there's no reason why money can't flow your way. What are you? So you just know the truth together. And so my mom had sat down with someone and she said, you know, I was with this doctor who was like super stable, but we had nothing in common, and he was boring, and he was too old, and it wasn't working, and the relationship wasn't working. And then she met this actor. It was like a lot of fun, but he was super unstable emotionally, financially. And at that point, she had little kids, and she's like, I can't have this guy be my guy when he's 1 minute he's got money, 1 minute he doesn't, then he has these fits, and you know, I have children, I need somebody stable, but I also need somebody that I have things in common with. And this practitioner said, what do you think, that doesn't exist? You know, both. In walks my dad, who was has a creative streak, and he goes to the same, he has the same spiritual practices and values and everything. But he's like a smart, steady, together guy. And he wanted kids. So it just clicked, and it was like divine timing. And
Awesome.
here I am.
So yes, you are training to become a practitioner yourself.
Yes.
That's exciting.
It's very exciting.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. We're reading a book right now that I think you'd like. It's called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself.
Interesting.
And it explains all the principles because, you know, Science of Mind was really created by a bunch of disgruntled Christians, right, who were the transcendentalists, and then later it was taken, Ernest Holmes kind of developed what they were starting into this religion, which they made it a religion so that they could have meetings and have an organization, but it's really kind of it's like going to not church. So a lot of the verbiage is Christian, because they're talking to Christians mostly. That was their community. So this guy, the author is Joe Dispenza. He puts it all in like quantum physics terms.
So incredible.
Yeah. So we are learning a lot about quantum physics because it's how the laws of, and you had said, the laws of nature parallel the laws of spirit. And that is kind of how I do explain it. You had asked me before how I would explain it to somebody who doesn't have any idea what I'm talking about. And it's kind of like, we talk about God, and God is like the force that starts nature, that starts all the law, that kicks all the laws into motion, right? And that's another thing is I get asked, do you believe in God? And I have to go, well, whoa, we need to define God. Because somebody's idea of God, the answer is a resounding no, you know? But that doesn't mean that I don't believe in God. It just, we have to define it. So as the sort of benevolent force, universal intelligence that started everything, yes, because something obviously did. And then if the universe and the world and nature and everything is like the macrocosm, then on a little micro level, that's what we are. And that's even mentioned in the Bible, actually, when they say image and likeness of God, they don't mean that God is like a guy that looks like a human. I mean, maybe they do, but the way that in Science of Mind, the interpretation is that it means like what we're made of. So this intelligence that sets into motion all these laws, that's what's going on in our bodies. As soon as consciousness comes into your body has these functions that it just does. And that's like the law of how the body works, right? And then when consciousness leaves it, it stops, and that's death.
Yeah.
So that's fascinating.
Yeah, it is.
Like the way that trees and nature, they just grow, right?
Right.
You know, nothing's doing it. It's self, what's the word? Life is designed to sustain itself. The body's designed to sustain itself in a certain way, and so is everything in nature. And something kicks that into motion, and that, in the case of as a human being, that is consciousness.
Yeah.
And your thoughts are what direct consciousness.
Exactly.
And what directs your experience. But behind the thoughts are the beliefs.
Yes.
Which is why The Secret doesn't work for everybody. Because they go, change your thinking. And then people go, well, this is
how?
poppycock. It works for some people because some people get it.
Yeah.
People go, well, I changed my thoughts. I'm thinking positive and nothing's happening.
Right.
It's like, yeah, you're thinking positive, but you're also thinking this is bullshit and it doesn't work.
Well, because you have your conscious and you have your subconscious. Like, you're thinking it in the conscious, but your subconscious is really believing something else.
Exactly.
So you have to get those aligned in order to really see a transformation.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So the creative process, another guy that we read is Troward. And his reading, it's boring. He's hard to get through. Like, you have to do it with a class. Otherwise, you're just going to go, But I took a class where we read Troward. And he maps out the creative process. And we did, in my class, we did examples of it. And one of the examples that I thought was a really good one was this guy actually acted it out, and he had coffee beans. And then he was, this is my potential. This is my idea. And then here's the process. Here's the grinder. Here's the thing, right? And then here is my coffee.
Yeah.
I had the beans. I had an idea of coffee. And then there's the process.
Yeah.
So you have a concept. I want to be an actress. And the machine, the coffee machine, that's all your subjective, subconscious thoughts. Because that's what motivates whether or not you get off your ass and do your submissions and call your agent and check in and show up to auditions and keep yourself healthy. And all the decisions are going to be based on, do you even think that this is reality? And if you don't believe that it's a possibility for you, you're not going to follow through. And this idea of I wanted to be an actress, at the end, you don't end up being one, and why, right?
Yeah.
So it's not even a question of you didn't want it. Maybe you wanted it very much. But everything you tried to do was it was limited by this idea that it's not really possible, it's not going to work. So
it's like you're saying you want something, but not really understanding that you wholeheartedly are not believing that can really happen for you. And so to get someone, say for instance, someone that's having, say, an issue where they want something and they're not seeing the results of what they want, what would you say to someone in starting the process of training their mind to think differently in order to vibrate differently? Like, what would be like a first steps?
To look at the belief itself, I would think, to me, to look at the belief and kind of narrow that. I have a really funny one. Yeah. So we were talking about patterns. Yeah. And waking up before 10 a.m. to me, it feels like there's like the Jack and the Beanstalk giant is sitting on my limbs and someone is smashing me in the face with metal bats. That's how I feel when I try to wake up before 10 a.m. And it's physical, and it's awful. Okay. I also do not think that I have ever put myself to bed, like gone to bed.
What do you mean?
I mean, I will not sleep until my eyes feel like they're going to bug out of my face.
And you just can't keep yourself
And I cannot keep them open any longer.
Why do you think that is?
Just you wait. Well, I mean, honestly, like, I will play games or read or do anything and until my eyes are like, that is when I go to sleep, right? When I think that it's because I was the youngest in my family, and I told my dad this, and he was like, "That is such a load." I'm like, "I'm not blaming you, right?" Yeah. But it's because I was the youngest in my family. I had to go to bed earlier than the other kids because they were like significantly older. They were like 7 years older, right? So we'd all be playing or we'd be watching TV, and then it was time. Okay, you go to bed. Then they get to watch the fun shows and the scary things or the stuff. And it made me feel left out, and it made me feel separate, and it made me feel lesser because I was alone doing this, and everybody else was having fun without me, right? So I have it in my head, going to bed is for babies.
Oh.
Only babies go to bed.
So this is like your...
Right?
Yeah,
and I would see the teenagers cranky in the morning, and I'd be like, well, the cool older kids are cranky in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, the cool people are cranky in the morning, and the babies go to bed. I have never gone to bed or been not cranky in the morning, because in my mind, that's how cool people function.
So...
Now, is that true?
Yeah.
No, it's absurd.
Right.
I mean, yeah, maybe when you're 8 and you're looking at teenagers who, by the way, are not that cool, but, you know, there's something about it got in there.
Yeah.
And it has become physical. And I have said, I am not a morning person.
Because that feeds the belief that, yeah.
But it's actually because of the repetition. It is now in my brain. It is now in my biology. And it now is actually physical.
And so that's your reality.
That is my reality.
For yourself.
But it's a reality that I created when somehow I got into my mind that if I want to be in the cool club, I have to stay up late and hate the morning. Yeah. And I can very easily go, this is just the way I am. This is the way my body functions.
And not take responsibility for breaking that down for yourself.
It is the way my body functions, but I did it.
It's so interesting. It's so interesting because a lot of times I try to avoid the conversation when people begin to say, oh, I have this and I have that and I have anxiety, and it's like, well, what are you thinking? And that's like a big thing that I hear people say, I have anxiety.
Everybody's got
like,
anxiety.
And it's hard to just like throw it at them. It's like, well, it's what you're thinking, it's what you're believing, and if you keep saying it, you're even making it more truer for yourself.
Or you are at a level now where it is physical. Fine, do what you gotta do to alleviate the physical while you work on the mental.
Yeah.
And Ernest Holmes says that. Yeah. Like whether it's a pill or a prayer, do what you need. Because it does get to a point where you can't control it, but you, through doing the work, people have overcome all kinds of shit.
Yeah, I feel like when we are looking to, I guess, self-development, evolve, I feel like it's so vital to look back on what you've been through. The dramatic moments that you know that you've experienced, and start with those, because otherwise you're really not going to get to a point of really growing and developing if you don't tackle that
There
first.
are different ideas around that. Some people think that it does help because once you can pinpoint what it is,
you can eliminate
then you can let it go, and you can eliminate it and go, okay, I'm being affected by this, and this is not even part of my life anymore. It's irrelevant.
Right. And if it's affecting your life in a negative way, or in the way that you're not wanting your life to go.
Right.
Yeah.
And then there's also the idea that it's like, if you're in such a state where you know that you are this divine energy, you are it. So it's not even that God is out here. You actually are God in the little microcosm sense of the word.
Yes.
Like like a snowflake. Every snowflake is individual. It's an individual expression of the greater thing, which is snow, which all together creates this one thing. But there's all these little pieces. If you really know that, and you know that all the time, then anytime something comes up, you can release it without even having to understand it. Because you know, whatever this is, if this is not in alignment with my divine self, and if I'm in reaction mode, then whatever it is, wherever it comes from, it's not real, and it can go.
Yeah.
But that's higher level shit, I think.
Right.
Yeah. But in
Yeah.
theory, you should be able to just snap out of it.
Well, to get to that level, like, I feel like the basis is like raising your level of awareness of the mind. Like, a lot of people are walking around not realizing that they are creating every day. Whether they're aware of it or not, they're attracting situations and circumstances to their lives that they're not aware of. And what would you say to someone that is looking to make those changes, but they don't really have a clear awareness that their mind is the powerful tool that is creating the situations that they're dealing with?
It's hard. People don't want to believe that.
Yeah.
It really is.
Well, I feel like they'd first have to be open-minded to it. Because they're coming to
That's
you.
true.
They're
You're coming
obviously
to a practitioner,
open-minded enough. And, you're seeking some sort of guidance. And obviously they want to know. They want to move forward. So I feel like they would be open enough at that point to receive.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then, we would look at an example. I want more friends. I feel isolated. I feel like I don't have any friends. And then you know, at the back of that, it's like, but they don't do anything. They don't go anywhere.
Right.
They don't put themselves out there.
Yeah.
They meet somebody, the person, they exchange numbers, and then they never text back.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and there's usually a belief there that is like, well, these people don't really like me. They don't really want to hang out with me. Maybe they do. Maybe they don't.
Yeah.
You know? But I've seen a lot of that.
Yeah.
I've seen people say that they want to be more social and they want to have more friends, and then anytime they meet someone, they don't follow through with it because somewhere in there they got it in their head that nobody really wants them there.
Do you think it's like they don't feel worthy of having friends?
Yeah. Or they feel like these people
told
don't care if I show up or not.
Yeah.
No one's going to notice.
Yeah.
I'm not significant or important, you know?
I think that kind of goes back to yourself and knowing your worth and really building up your self-esteem, your self-worth. Because if you feel worthy enough, if you say you desire something, you should also feel worthy enough to have it, and therefore you will create those situations and circumstances to where you will receive.
Yeah, I mean, I know someone who literally said to me the other day, she goes, well, I'm in bed. It was middle of the day. I'm in bed right now. And I said, why are you in bed right now? Well, I have no money and I don't have any friends and I don't have anywhere to go or anything to do. And I went, why don't you get a job?
Get out of bed?
Well, get a job.
Yeah.
Well, no, I can't get a job. Well, no, you can't. Literally, I went to the bank today and it said help wanted in the window. You could walk into the bank and you get a job. Well, I don't want to work at the bank. I'm like, oh, okay.
So you don't want a job?
So you don't want a job. I'm like, and by the way, not just the bank. That's just a place I mentioned. You could walk in anywhere and you would get a job. And that you would be out of your house. You would have somewhere to go.
Yeah.
It would solve your money problem. And maybe you would even, meet people. Make a few friends.
Yeah.
You know? Oh, well, that's not how depression works.
Yeah.
She's going, I'm depressed because I'm sitting in a dark room.
Yeah.
And I don't have anyone to hang out with. I'm like, well, then leave your dark room and find people to hang out with. Some of these are just shifts in behavior, but there's some reason. There is some mental reason, and, you know, I don't want to knock people with depression, but depression comes from somewhere.
Oh, everything comes
and
from
it's
somewhere.
cyclical, and it's a downward spiral.
It is.
Because when I make poor eating choices, it leads to poor everything you know what I mean? And then all of a sudden I feel like shit about myself. And it's really easy to continue. Do you ever notice, you're either exercising every day or not at all? Because you skip a day and all of a sudden you feel like shit, and then you go, what's the point? Never mind, and before you know it, it's been a month.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like objects at rest stay at rest, and motion stay in motion.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I think that's why, I guess, creating good habits for yourself is really important, because if not, then you kind of just eventually go down some sort of rabbit hole or spiral. So I obviously have The Science of Mind, Ernest Holmes, big, thick textbook, which is incredible. I've just started reading that.
Yeah, it's great, but it's so dense.
It is, but I love that. And so many things, just it's very eye-opening. But it does state your conditions are being controlled by your thoughts.
Right.
So I know we just were talking about, say for instance, the depression. That is your condition. And her thoughts were, I'm this, I'm this, I'm this, I'm this, I'm that, which is what she believes, which eventually creates the reality that she's depressed and she has no job and blah, blah, blah. So I'm really wanting to get past to people that are watching and really express to them how extremely powerful your mind is. Well, I think raising your vibration is definitely a part of it, because you can't think a thought and then not have your vibration match it in order to, see or live
for a
out
minute.
What you're
for a minute, and then you get it, and then you lose it. You get the thing, and then you lose the thing if you don't believe that you're equal to it.
Yeah.
You know, our acting teacher, how we met,
Yeah.
Once said something that blew my mind. She talked about gambling.
Yeah.
And she said, gamblers, they play to lose.
Yeah.
And that she said she went to the racetrack with her father, and they all lost their money, and they all sit around the loser table. And then the whole day was them drinking and laughing and talking about how if I had only done this one, and I was so close to winning. And she observed this and went, this is why they're here. Yeah. It's not about winning money. It's about the loser circle. This is where they live.
Yeah.
And if one of those guys had the misfortune of winning, everybody was like mad at him.
Right.
And he was out, and he would get rid of that money as quickly as possible.
To be back
in the loser circle. That's what they were really about.
Yeah.
They didn't want to win.
Right.
And they never did. And even when they did, they got rid of it right away.
Right.
You know?
Well, that kind of...
Because they were not equal to that. They were equal to being the guys that sit around complaining about how they never win.
When you have a certain mindset, and if that mindset isn't equal to having a larger sums of money, then your mindset is going to actively put you in those positions to be back to where your mindset fits your beliefs about having money or etc.
Oh my God, yeah. People who have poverty mentality cannot attract money. They cannot hold on to it.
Yeah.
And also people who have arrogance about being poor, which a lot of people do, because the way, instead of, if they grew up a certain way, their families, their parents who couldn't provide for them, wanted to feel better about the fact that they couldn't provide for them. So they would instill it into their children, we're the nice people, those are the rich people.
Exactly.
And almost create a sense of pride about being poor.
Yeah.
And that people that had money must have somehow either stolen it or didn't deserve it or stepped on people to get it, and that wealth is evil. And a lot of people are walking around with that idea.
Oh, yeah.
Angry and resentful at people who have money.
Yeah.
How are you ever going to join them?
Yeah.
You hate them. You're not going to join the club that you hate. That makes no sense.
Yeah, but people are not aware of that.
No, they have no idea that they're doing it. They're not conscious of it at all.
Yeah, I think that's the big turning point, and I think that's the big part of what needs to happen in order to get us as a collective to have more love and respect for one another. It's like knowing yourself that you have these beliefs that were created at childhood or whenever they were, and you're not having, or you have these certain feelings towards a group of people, whether it's a prejudice, whether it's, the rich people are the mean people or whatever they are.
Right, and just understanding that people are people, everybody is human, everybody is operating at a certain level, and things like money don't define a person. Money is a thing that flows in and flows out. It's just a thing.
Yeah, it's not energy.
Right. So there's really no such thing as a rich person or a poor person. There are people, and some of them have abundance flowing their way, and others have rejected it and they don't have it.
Yeah.
And why is that? But we tell ourselves these lies to feel better about where we are.
It's like to self-validate that I'm right. And I think that's a lot of ego, or a lot of people kind of get stuck as well. It's just like having that ego and not being able to let go and wanting to be right about something, even if making them right is still putting them in that horrible situation.
It is, but then they don't have to change and they can feel better about where they are. I mean, I know a lot of people that are arrogant about being fat. I mean, I never had a weight problem, but when I was in college, I was like a little bit overweight. Like a lot of people are, maybe not a lot, but, enough that it was a problem for my mom. And my mom was so mean to me about it. Like borderline, emotionally abusive about it.
Oh.
Right?
Okay.
Because of the way that she grew up, where she was taught that, if you're not perfect and beautiful, basically you'll die. Survival hinged on that for women. And it really did in her family. The women were very beautiful, and that's how they got husbands, and that's how they survived, because they weren't educated, and they didn't really have those opportunities, and everything else was not developed. It wasn't encouraged. So you better be beautiful.
Wow.
So she doesn't do it consciously, but it's on herself, and she sees her children as an extension of her.
Yeah.
So if she sees one of her daughters dressing badly or putting on some weight, she's it's almost like fear for her survival.
Yeah.
And she's not conscious of it, but she went into panic mode, right?
Yeah.
And she was awful. Now, I don't know that this is what's going on with her, because I'm 19, and I'm not very empathetic, and I'm not really interested in being empathetic, and so I dug my heels in and would not lose that 10 pounds, because I was afraid that if I did, that it would be like she would get to feel like she did the right thing by being mean. I felt like if she emotionally abused me and then it worked and I did the thing she wanted, then she was going to walk away with the comforting thought that you know, what she did was correct.
Yeah.
You know,
in order to get you to do what she wanted
right.
to do, she needed to
that's how you should be with people.
Yeah.
These are all just ideas. These are all just concepts. And the truth is, it's like my body, my experience has nothing to do with my mother.
Yeah.
You know, she's coming from a place of pain and fear. Right?
I think that's a lot of what our behavior is based off of is fear. And I feel fear is so heavily weighed amongst us, like as a collective. Like, what would be a good tip to get them on the road to becoming more aware of fear and then making choices not based on out of fear?
I think it's helpful to look at examples of people who've done the thing. In this book, you know, he talks about people who were not delusional.
Right.
They knew what reality they were living in, and they also knew that there was a different reality that was possible. And so they weren't like, you know, Gandhi wasn't sitting around going, India is free, and you know, people respect each other.
Yeah.
And my people have opportunity and they're thriving. He wasn't not aware of the conditions.
Right.
But he acted as though they were what he saw, his vision. You know, he had a vision of the way things should be, and that's how he functioned, and that's what he trained his mind to be there, to be ahead of the circumstances, and not in the circumstances, while still aware. You know, and you look at people like, you know, like Martin Luther King, right, who was not unaware of the fact that, you know, we were in segregation. But he had an idea that a world could exist where black people and white people coexisted, and it was irrelevant. Yeah. Right? Right. And, you know, we're not there, but we're a lot closer.
A lot closer, hey.
Yeah. When my mother was a child, she was not allowed to play with black kids. It was not allowed.
It reminds me of this book that I just read by Neville Goddard. It's the
my mom's obsessed with him.
Yes.
My mom is obsessed with him.
The power of awareness. And he really talks about how using the law of assumption, like you were just saying, how he just saw himself living the life, you know, like the other people, and then that's what came to be for himself. So it's just like the power of assuming that you already are what you desire to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, Stevie Wonder said being black and being blind were not relevant to his life. Right. And you know, they weren't. Music was his life, and the rest of it, he has created a lot more than most white people who can see. Yeah. So how does that happen? Right. He chose not to have that be a problem. Yeah. He's not delusional. Right. He knows that people see him that way, and I'm sure there are people who still treat him like a handicap. Those circumstances didn't inform who he was or what he thought about himself or how capable he saw himself of being, and so they just weren't. One kind of funny one is that everybody knows I'm short. I'm 5 foot nothing. It's kind of funny because most people want to be tall. I hear that. Yeah. You know, being like, oh, I wish I was tall. I think they knew I was going to be small. So my parents just like made a point of flooding me with all this like ideas that being small was better. The smaller you are, the more feminine you are. The more boys will like you. You want to be 4'11" is the best height. Judy Garland was 4'11". You know, Dolly Parton's 4'11". Right. So I thought that the smaller you are as a woman, the more attractive, more feminine, more adorable, all of that. It never even occurred to me until I was out in the world when people were like, why don't you just say you're 5'1"? You could pass for 5'1". I'm like, why would I say I'm 5'1"? I'm 5 foot. I wish I was 4'11". Like, it never occurred to me that being short was not the best thing you could be as a girl. Those are the beliefs that I was given. Those are the ones I accepted. I never even crossed my mind that I should wish I was taller.
Well, I'm so glad that you joined us today. I'm so glad
Thank you
that
for
you shared
having
with
me.
us.
This was so fun.
Yeah, this is the first. So it's actually kind of a full circle.
Yes.
Because Decide to Succeed is obviously based on self-development and how powerful our minds are, and me getting started in Science of Mind, Decide to Succeed. And so it's kind of like a full circle, you being my first guest.
Yes. Well,
And
I'm
being the one who introduced me to
so
Sides of
excited
Mine.
to be your first guest, and I'm excited to see what comes next.
Me too.
Amazing. Well, thank you.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us, and tell us where we can find you in the social media world what you're doing in your life.
I am Genevieve. I have all of them, the Insta, the TikTok, whatever. So it's Catfight Joy, which used to be a nickname. It's not anymore, but it's still my handle. Catfight Joy. I have 2 podcasts, Just Genevieve, which is available everywhere, and then I have a podcast on Patreon, which is called More Than Just Genevieve, that if you go to Patreon and you look that up, you can see my interview with this one that we did a few months ago.
Yeah.
And, so
awesome.
That's it.
Well, thanks again for joining us. I hope that today's guest shared a bit of knowledge and experience that helped you. I hope that the examples that we talked about were very helpful in understanding how and why we are in the situations and circumstances that we are experiencing. It is very powerful. We are very powerful as human beings. It's only natural for us to create. Thanks again for joining us on Decide to Succeed. Please subscribe, hit the bell. It'll notify you for when we upload our next video.